Here are 3 authors that I have been recently enjoying that I want you to read. I thought this would be a fun way to group a couple authors, review their books, recommend them. This is going to be an ongoing series, but for this video specifically, 3 authors that I've read at least 2 of their books and enjoy them, and that I own at least 1 more. Just for fun. So let's get to it. Let's start with Elif Shafak, which I've actually discovered because of you. So this is all on you in the comment section. Last year, I was asking you for some of your best books that you had read the previous year, and you recommended 2 of her books to me, and they're the 2 that I actually read and finished by her. And yeah, you were right. I also really love her work. It's actually a little bit outside of my comfort zone. It's a bit more literary fiction, a bit more magical realism than what I usually go for. And they worked. They worked. My favorite, the one that made it to my best books of last year, was 10 minutes and 38 seconds in This Strange World. And this story was definitely emotional, definitely some trigger warnings. I would look into it. But one premise that I actually really like is whenever the main character dies in the beginning of the book, because you get obviously instantly invested, and then you spend the rest of the book hoping that it's not going to happen. I was basically in denial the whole time. So the book starts with her dying. She lives in Turkey and she is a sex worker, and she's left beside a dumpster. And while she is dying for 10 minutes and 38 seconds, her brain is still working. So you're getting flashbacks of the important moments in her life, how she got to this point, and the important people in her life. So that's most of the book. And then afterwards, you get to see the consequences, the effects of the grief of her passing away on these people. And this portion is the portion that has a bit more magical realism than I usually like, but I gave this book 5 stars. This was just so emotional. I was really invested. I love her writing style. It just, you know how it is. Sometimes the style just doesn't necessarily stand out to you, and sometimes it just really appeals to you. And I feel like she was very quotable, and yeah, absolutely adore this one. So much so that I also did finish very recently, actually. This is The Island of Missing Trees. And this one is also magical realism because some of the chapters are told from the point of view of a fig tree. Because why not, right? This one is also a mix of genre. You get flashbacks, but in the present time of the book, you're following this young girl and her parents have moved to the UK, and her mother passed away recently, and she's dealing with the grief, and her father, who's really not good with words, is also dealing with that grief. They're not communicating. It's very difficult on her. And then you get the flashbacks of how her parents met, how they were from the same island, different religion, there was tension, the relationship, things that happened at the time, and how they ended up, moving. And yeah, I really enjoyed this one too. I believe it was like a 4.25 star. Again, really, really beautiful. I completely understand why everyone is so invested emotionally in her stories, because I feel like for me in general, if you look at my reviews, that's what makes the difference between a good book and a really good book, if I get emotionally invested. And I tend to be a little picky, which I've realized by reading so much on Booktube. Sometimes I feel emotionally manipulated, and I feel like there's a fine line, Obviously the author wants you to feel these emotions, and sometimes I just go full on and feel them, and sometimes I'm like, you're trying to trick me. Like, it's just not working. I'm just not forgetting that portion. So yes, I highly recommend her. Again, my favorite by her is this one, but both of these are fantastic. This one might be a bit more historical fiction, I guess, a little bit. But yes, love these 2. I did start and didn't finish The 40 Rules of Love. And I will admit that this one felt a bit more, I don't know what the actual term would be in English, but like woo-woo. Like, it wants to be really deep, but I wasn't vibing with it. I am still planning on continuing. It is part of what I like to call my pile of shame. No shame, but it's just a funny way to describe the books that I put down that I fully intend on finishing. But it's been, I think I started it in January of last year, so it's not great. It will happen eventually. I am like halfway through, like 169 pages into it. But yes, it seems like there's going to be kind of this love story, but for now, I wasn't really feeling it, and halfway through, probably not a good sign. But I love these 2 so much that I am fully planning on reading more by her, so much so that I did recently purchase this one. This is The Bastard of Istanbul, which again kind of seemed to be similar. These characters feeling lost and then returning home. In this case, it is an Armenian American living in San Francisco that will go back to Turkey, and there seems to be, again, emotional moments that will be happening, and I'm fully ready for this. And you guys have been recommending nonstop her most recent book, which I think is Rivers in the Sky, I think. I'll put it on the screen, but I will be reading it. My library doesn't have the audiobook. That was my next step. I wanted to try her work as audiobooks just to see, because I feel like, again, the way she writes would sound really beautiful out loud. So I was planning on doing that, but my library doesn't have it. So I will either get the ebook or just purchase it, because again, at this point... Anyway, Elif Shafak is definitely an author that is emerging in my collection. I want to try more of her books. I want to try anything. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. But yes, you will be seeing me recommending her books more and more, because again, the fact that I'm still raving about these, even though they're not usually what I go for, very good sign. The second author I wanted to rave about is Grady Hendrix. I have read 4 of his books, and I have 1 more, so it can fit for the specific team of this video. But let's talk about the 4 that I have read, letting you know which one is my favorite, which, you know what, let's start with that one, because why not? This is my latest read by him. He writes horror, which, again, I like mystery thriller, but over time I've realized maybe I don't really vibe with the really popular ones, like domestic thriller kind of thing. And he has really impressed me, because he has made me realize that maybe I do like horror, especially when they have some kind of social commentary. Some of these are more funny than others, and he often has teenage girls as main characters, which I'll admit, I feel like male authors at this point, there's a very, very fine line they can walk on with these kind of topics. I feel like it's too easy to just go straight up misogyny, especially teenage girls, right? And he doesn't. The bar is low, but I appreciate it. And this one was really interesting. Witchcraft for Wayward Girls, which, you know, should mention the title. In this one, it is set in 1970 during the summer, and these girls that are pregnant are sent by their family into to this house, remote house, where they will be giving birth, you know, in shame, and then they can return home. The babies will be adopted out. And I am child-free. I don't want kids, so I feel like just this portion is already horror to me, because statistically speaking, these poor girls are minors, and the men that got them pregnant usually aren't, which, you know, and the topic is really centered around them feeling this resentment, and the fact that they're the only one paying, you know, the price, and the fact that they feel betrayed by their family, the person, again, that got them pregnant, the people that they tried to get help from. So they're very, very isolated, and there's a lot of frustration and anger. And then there is this woman, mysterious woman, who gives some of these girls a book of witchcraft, and chaos ensues, which I'm a big fan of witches, so I feel like there could have been more, which is like my only critique of the book. I wanted more, but otherwise I really, really enjoyed it. I read it pretty fast, considering this is his biggest book, at least the one I have seen and read. And yeah, it is recent. It came out in January this year, so I feel like we're going to see this one going more and more and become more popular, because it deserves some hype. And yes, would recommend that one. And like I said, I'm pretty sure this is my favorite by him. I think my second favorite would have to be this one, which is How to Sell a Haunted House, which is probably his most gruesome. It's not super out there. I think there's only 2 scenes that I was like super uncomfortable, because again, I don't read that much horror. And you're following this one, it's like 2 siblings and their parents passed away. It literally starts with her brother calling him. Like, she's not close to her family anymore. She moved away from the drama, and then her brother tells her, oh yeah, they died a couple days ago in this like car accident. So she goes back home to get the house prepared to try and sell it. And then think creepy dolls and what's the name for it, you know, the ones that you put on your hand. Freaking creepy thing, okay? I will never, to be fair, I've never been a big fan. They're always kind of creepy when people have collections, okay? Everyone feels differently about this, but it was a lot. So there's a lot of flat family drama happening. There's a weird dynamic, and a lot happens. Horror, once again. So yeah, she gets there, things are weird, and they get weirder and weirder. And if you like dysfunctional families, this is going to be something that you might want to check. So yes, did enjoy this one too. This one was definitely probably the creepiest one I have read by him. And then another one that follows teenage girls that it kind of is funny, at least it was to me, is My Best Friend's Exorcism, which this cover is literally everything. So there's this group of teenage girls and things happen. One of them becomes maybe possessed. Is she not? And yeah, there's an exorcism in there, and that's definitely a portion I got to giggling, because it was just so out there and funny. I think there was one scene that is kind of, if you don't care for animal abuse, so just be warned. But yes, this was the first one that I read by him, and I was really, really surprised, and I ended up wanting to read more, so here we are. And then the last one is my least favorite that I gave 4-star to. So, you know, would be this one. This is Horror Store, and this one is the main female character who feels kind of lost in life. She works at this store that looks a lot like IKEA, but like the cheap version of it. And she ends up having to stay overnight to go through the store because things are being weird and she's forced. So she has no choice. She basically lives in the parking lot. So she stays and things get weirder and weirder and kind of creepy also. So if that's your thing. But I really like the format because of it. You get, again, a bunch of things that kind of look like IKEA and a little bit of commentary about capitalism. That was interesting too. So would recommend. And then the one that I own, because, you know, that's the point of the video, that I have yet to read is this one. This is the Final Girl Support Group. I've also heard that the Southern something is also something that I should look into. I think this one is Vampire. A lot of you told me this was actually not his best, which we'll see. I'm going to try it at this point because, again, 4 out of 4. I gave all of them 4 stars. So, like, I will read pretty much anything at this point. So you've convinced me to try more horror. So I will be reading that one, but I've been warned. But yeah, I'm really excited for the other one too, because at this point, I'll read everything. The last author that I fell in love with fairly recently that I want to recommend is Chris Whitaker. Hopefully that's how you pronounce it. I have read 2 of his books. Again, that's the team of the video, and I own 1. But the 2 that I have read, I actually got from the library. So I don't own physical copies, but I need to. The first one is We Begin at the End, which I'm going to be honest, I don't feel like the story stuck with me 100% because I listened to it as an audiobook, which I think was a mistake because I feel like I didn't absorb that story as well as I wanted to because of the writing style. It's so beautiful, but for some reason, reading it physically just worked better. It happened. But it seems like his book have this story centered around smaller towns, almost drama, but also like mystery, but they're like, I want to say soft mystery in a sense that it's not something that you stay up at night to find the answers about. It's just the journey. That is the whole point of the book. So that was kind of my feeling with that one. I ended up giving it 4-star and I did enjoy it, but I absolutely loved All the Colors of the Dark, which I read last year in December, and it made it to my best books of the year, like last second. So oh my gosh, this book, again, absolutely about the journey. You have this boy called Patch because he has an eye patch, and the pretty rich girl from the town, there's someone that tries to kidnap her. He intervenes, he gets injured, and he's the one that is kidnapped. And you're seeing the consequences of his disappearance on the people in the town, but also what happens to him. And you're following them over their whole lives because, of course, these kind of situations will affect everyone. There's a little bit of historical fiction, a little bit of mystery, but again, the point of the book is not about, you know, figuring out what happens, which you do, to make that clear, because I know some people just don't like when you don't get answers, so that's fine. But I guess a bit historical fiction because it's a little bit of what happened to small towns, you know, girls disappearing all over. He's the only boy that disappeared because he wasn't really the person that was meant to. And yeah, you're seeing the effects on everyone. So beautiful writing. Absolutely love his writing. Again, it's hard to describe. You either are into it or you're not. And I love him so much in that one that I decided to buy one more just very recently. This is Tall Hoax. I didn't know he had other books. I thought these were his only 2 books, but I think he has 2 other ones that are older. And I did feel like he had improved his writing style between the first book that I read and the second one. But I still wanted to try one of his older books just in case, because again, I want more. And this one is also a child disappearance in a small town, and everyone ends up being a suspect because it could be anyone, and you slowly get the answer, I'm assuming, and I'm ready for it. So if you enjoy these stories centered around children disappearing in small towns, the investigation, but again, slow burn kind of story, and you end up loving his writing, I would highly recommend checking out Chris Whitaker, and I will be reading anything that he comes out with. After All the Colors of the Dark, I will read anything else he comes out with next, and I will be impatiently waiting, but that's why I decided to pick an older book, just to, you know, have something until then. So these are 3 authors that have recently caught my eye that I am looking forward to reading more by them, and I would love to hear your thoughts if you've read anything by them, because I would love to hear your thoughts, and if you have any recommendations, which ones should I read next by them. And if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up so I'll know to continue this series. I definitely have a lot more authors I could recommend, and I will be putting on the screen more videos that I recommend you check out. Actually, I recently did a video where where I talked about my most read authors, which aren't always my favorite authors. So it's an interesting look into what I've been going through the last couple of years on BookTube. And then I recently did a Read It or Unhaul It, where I tried to read my physical books that are unread on my shelves. And I decluttered a bunch. It was very spring cleaning. I'll see you in my next video. Bye.